that can stop me inside this octagon, and only politics can slow me. I don't have much left to say other than you have seen nothing yet.
It's time!
You're listening to the Cage Nation TV Prizefight Podcast. Coming to you from the Coastal Cameron Studios in Willington, North Carolina.
Are you ready?
Here's your host, the big fella, Albert Cameron.
Let's get it on!
Thank you for joining us for the Prizefight Podcast this week. I'm your host, the big fella, Mr. Albert Cameron, and I just got done playing a game called How Many Takes Is It Going to Take Before I Actually Get Into the Bulk of What I'm Trying to Say. Coming up this week on the Prizefight Podcast, Invicta FC is on the radar. Josh Friend and Chaka Worthy both victorious at their fights last night. It's certified, ladies and gentlemen, War Machine's a scumbag. And I'm going to talk about why I'm never going to talk about that son of a bitch ever again on the show. But before we get into all that, I do want to make you guys aware that there is a local fighter by the name of Ryan Areola who experienced one of the worst tragedies that a human being can experience. His house spontaneously exploded, and he essentially lost everything. He had to put his dogs down, and he's in a real bad situation. Fighters in the local community have put together a GoFundMe page to try to help Ryan out, and I'm encouraging you guys to visit that page. Give what you can. Ryan's a brother to many individuals that we enjoy fighting. They're asking for our help, and I'm asking for your help. Let's do our part to try to get Ryan somewhere back to normal. I don't think normal's ever going to come for the guy. This is a big change in his life. But as the MMA community, let's get together, give what we can. Let's show a brother, there is a lot of love out there for him. So the link for the GoFundMe page is going to be in the YouTube description. It's also going to be in the CageNationTV.com description. I'm also going to post a link on the Cage Nation TV Facebook page. Whatever you can do to help Ryan out. We got a brother who certainly can use our help, and I'm encouraging you that if you can, let's show the man some help. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some local fighters, what to keep your eye on. Don't go nowhere. It's the Prizefight Podcast. Cage Nation TV would like to take a second and formally thank all of the businesses that have taken the time to sponsor a mixed martial artist or a boxer as they have trained to attain greatness. In the world of business, it can be looked at as an advertising expense to get your name out there. But did you know that your sponsorship dollars is actually keeping the American dream alive? Your help and support is actually changing the lives of aspiring athletes. Working hard and reaching for the brass ring is truly the great American story. We encourage all of our listeners and followers to support businesses that sponsor your favorite fighters. And thank you to those businesses for your continued support and encouragement.
This week in MMA history.
This week in MMA history, March 26th through April 1st, March 26, 2016, Pinnacle Fighting Championships 13. Rob Hanna had vacated the Gladiators of the Cage Lightweight Championship after defeating Iron City Mike Wilkins for the title. He was dropping down to featherweight to pursue a bout with Dominic the Honey Badger Mazzata for his Pinnacle FC Featherweight Championship. The bout came to a head at the Sirius Shrine in Cheswick, Pennsylvania, with Mazzata defeating Hanna with a third-round choke. March 28, 2015, at Complete Devastation MMA 11, CD MMA would hold their last event ever, holding the event at the Jaffa Mosque in Altoona, Pennsylvania. With the days leading into the bout, the fight card had boiled down to only 4 fights, including the main event of Billy the Sucker Ward, King of the Cage veteran, versus Brad the Machine Gun Mountain. Also at the event was UFC fighter Charlie the Spaniard Brenneman signing autographs and giving interviews to yours truly in the middle of the cage. No one at the time knew that it would be the last event, as CD MMA 12 had been planned, but ultimately shut down by the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission. March 29, 2014, Pinnacle FC Pittsburgh Challenge Series 6. One of the best fight triangles in Pittsburgh history, including bouts with Pretty Richie Canalina, Ethan the Wolverine Goss, and Rel Hodge, had momentum swing in Hodge's way in a big way with a victory over Richie Canalina. March 31st, 2012, Complete Devastation MMA 4 CD MMA expands their local reach by promoting an event in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. This event would mark the first local appearance of Southern MMA standout Dewan Dirty South Owens, who was victorious in the main event over Brett Ewing. April 1st, 2009 at UFC Fight Night Condit vs. Campman, the UFC promotes its very first event in the state of Tennessee, setting the record for highest attendance for an MMA event in Tennessee, and for a UFC Fight Night show. The bout would be the UFC debut of WEC franchise fighter Carlos the Natural Born Killer Condit.
This is the Bionic Fist of Justice, Dan Kikuta. You're tuned in to the Prizefight Podcast.
Welcome back to the Prizefight Podcast. I'm your host, the big fella, Mr. Albert Cameron, and I lied to you all. I said I was done playing the game of how many takes, and I lied because I just played another couple rounds of it. I'm going for the high score, boys and girls. Anyway, welcome back to the Prizefight Podcast. I'm your host, the big fella, Mr. Albert Cameron, and I'm not going to lie, I miss a lot of you guys from the North, a lot. One, I miss my boys, my Cage Nation TV crew, but I also miss everyone surrounding the fight circus. Now, I need to be completely, full disclosure, everything on the table. I love my little fight circuit down here in North Carolina. Did some good stuff. Battle in the South, right down the road, right here in Wilmington. Next Level Fight Club in Raleigh. There's a boxing tournament going on. There's a lot of good stuff to be happy about here in North Carolina. But, the promoters are great down here. I've made some new friends. People down here are really nice. But I do miss you guys. I really do miss you guys. Especially whenever IT Fight Series is bringing the hurt in Ohio. Last night, an event that can only be described as off the chain, off the hook, whatever you young kids say. IT Fight Series brought the hurt in a good way when it came to promoting fights. Pinnacle boxing veteran, Pinnacle Fighting Championships veteran, Gladiators of the Cage MMA veteran Josh Fremd defends his IT Fight Series middleweight championship against Miles Robinson last night. Chaka the Star Destroyer Worthy got the win over T-Shay Gouthro. Fight of the Night honors I will put out. And that's not just the press talking. That is not just my boys in Scribe here. That is the fight promotion saying that Chaka Worthy did the work, brought the hurt, performed, and his fight was the fight of the night. Charlie Radke gets a knockout of the night over Jeffrey Pelton. And it was a great night to be at the IT Fight Series. And the whole point of that introduction, me telling you guys to keep your eyes on the IT Fight Series is, it's been no secret that Pittsburgh MMA has been going through a little bit of a drought. I don't know why. I have faith. I know that Matt Layshak, the entrepreneur behind the Pinnacle brand of combat sports, he is a man who knows what he's doing. And he's done a lot to contribute to Pittsburgh combat sports. I trust in that man. Whatever he's got up his sleeve for his Pinnacle brand of combat sports, I trust that it's going to be excellent and that we're all going to enjoy thoroughly. I also trust very much in Gladiators of the Cage. I don't know what's going on outside of that camp. When it comes to business, and business ultimately leads to talking about money, I try to avoid those conversations. I mean, because you wouldn't go up to your buddy across the street being like, hey, how much you got in your bank account? I mean, you might. Stop doing that. It's considered rude. I don't ask operational questions of fight promotions. I mean, if it's an obvious thing. So, one of my favorite memories of Gladiators of the Cage was, I think the last one I went to at Stage AE. The main event had dropped out because Justin Edwards had to be hospitalized. He was experiencing degrees of kidney failure. He had to be hospitalized. That is something that is understandable. Fight cards are always subject to change. But Justin Edwards had to be hospitalized for kidney problems. So, operationally, Gladiators of the Cage exercised transparency. Robert Joseph, one of the best promoters in that scene, Matt Layshak and Robert Joseph built a great fight scene in Pittsburgh. They really did. They really built a fight scene that we could all hang our hats on. Robert Joseph climbs into the cage and says, hey guys, I'm sorry this happened. Someone had to be hospitalized. Our main event has changed. Okay? That's awesome. To get into the cage and say, hey, this happened, and to put a face to it. To have the CEO of the company come out to the cage and say, this is what happened. I'm sorry. He took it one step further, and he said, if you bought tickets to see either of these fighters, it was either a refund or like a ridiculous discount on the rematch. Something absolutely ridiculous. And I don't ask operational questions. I am free to report on them whenever the company makes their operational decisions public like that. Whenever it's transparent like that, well, then I can pick up the context clues and go. Robert Joseph fell on a sword that he essentially did not have to fall on. And he manned up big time. And he took the disappointment that people may have felt for that fight, and he made it his own personal responsibility. You guys just listened to to This Week in MMA History. You know, a fight card boiled down to 4 fights. It could have canceled, but it didn't. You know, that promoter was well within his rights to say, hey, these are the 4 fights you were offered. This is what it is. You know, you guys all remember what happened July 19th, 2013 at the Jaffa Mosque. You know, you saw how that fight card fell apart, but the promoter picked up and ran. And at no time do I ever put fault on a promoter for a fight card falling apart. If someone displays that maybe they haven't exercised the best in project management, well, maybe that's when they need to fall on a sword. But for Robert Joseph to go out in front of a crowd and say, hey, I'm sorry this main event fell apart. This is what I'm going to offer you. I think he went above and beyond. And that fight card that still happened tonight, it was an incredible fight card. It was still a great fight card. So Robert Joseph, in my opinion, had nothing to apologize for. So after that diatribe, what I'm trying to get at is I trust the promoters of Pittsburgh Combat Sports. I trust them. They have proven time and time again, they have demonstrated that they have the best of the fight fans at mind and at heart at all times. So whatever is going on in Pittsburgh, I trust that there's something good that's going to come out of it. But what we have is, being that Pittsburgh MMA and Pittsburgh MMA, because Pinnacle Boxing is doing great things, but being that we have Pittsburgh MMA going through a little bit of a drought, we have an opportunity for other fight scenes to kind of step up and say, okay, I'm going to take a piece of the pie. One of the closest areas from Pittsburgh is Ohio. And that's why a lot of fighters from Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania go to fight in Ohio promotions. It's why older Pennsylvanians, and when I say older, I mean older than 35, because once you are older than 35, licensing becomes very difficult for you to get a fight, to get your medicals. They require a lot of you from that. So once you're older than 35, it becomes a little more difficult to get licensed in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania does that because they're looking out for the safety of athletes. So once you're older than 35, then you start going over to Ohio. That's why a lot of Pennsylvania amateurs compete in the NAAFS. That's why Pittsburgh fighters go fight for IT Fight Series. That's why Pennsylvania fighters go fight for Strike Off in Virginia, or Bayfront Brawl in Erie. So keep your eyes on Ohio, because I have a feeling that this is going to continue until Pittsburgh makes their stand. And let's be honest, Pittsburgh's invaded Ohio before. Gladiators of the Cage held an event at the Hard Rock Casino in Cleveland, Ohio. So, maybe a little quid pro quo, this for that. Who knows? But I see a lot more people staking ground near the Pittsburgh border outside the state, because every state athletic commission is a little different. That's why the UFC doesn't promote amateur fights. Because if the UFC were to promote amateur fights, it would never be the same fight all the time. It would be a little confusing. So keep your eye on Ohio. Keep your eye on Harrisburg, too. I feel like there's some stuff going on in Harrisburg and towards the eastern part of the state at Philly and Lancaster that they might positioning for state domination, too. And we talked the other week about, hey, fight promoters, pack your bags, going to Altoona. And there is every reason why a fight promoter should go to Altoona. The scene's already there. It's already been built. The fighters have not gone anywhere. The local distribution is still there, fight promoters. Altoona would be a stronghold in Pennsylvania. And I firmly believe in the Keystone State's MMA ability. I have seen some fantastic fights in Pennsylvania. I have seen Pennsylvania fighters come ready to compete, and rarely, and I'm talking fraction of a percent, have I ever seen someone fight in Pennsylvania that just didn't want it. Our amateur, the Pennsylvania amateur fighters are great. I can't say our fighters, but the Pennsylvania amateurs are great. The females who fight in Pennsylvania are great. Fight promoters need to get into Altoona, Pennsylvania, but keep your eye on the areas around Pittsburgh. And then, here's a good stock tip as far as fight goes. Once these areas around Pittsburgh start heating up, I see one of the mainstay Pittsburgh promotions, whether it be Pinnacle or Gladiators, I see them making a big comeback and making a statement being like, no, this is our house. You get out of our house. And that's going to be interesting to see. So congratulations to Josh Fremd for defending his title, Chaka Worthy getting fight of the night, and Charlie Radke for getting knockout of the night. And, if you get the opportunity, always support IT Fight Series. Support Pinnacle. Support Gladiator. Support every MMA option you can. Because ultimately, that's where the fighters of tomorrow are going. You don't think Kama and Chaka Worthy are going places? I guarantee they are. Kama Worthy is going to go fight in China. What's the next step after that? And that's where Dominic Mazzata's heading. I haven't read it officially. I have not seen the words Dominic Mazzata going to the UFC, but there has been a lot of contact clues that say that's where the Honey Badger's headed. So last night, Tanya Evinger defends her Invicta FC Bantamweight Championship in a big way. Congratulations, Miss Evinger. That is fantastic. That is awesome. But if we're all talking about it, then you already know whose radar it's on, and I'm talking about a promotion that rhymes with Smultimate Fighting Championship. And I'm really thinking that Invicta is about due for another raid. And I'll tell you why. The UFC's bantamweight darling, Rowdy Ronda Rousey, well, we're talking about her retiring. Holly Holm moved up to featherweight, Miesha Tate retired. So right there is the bantamweight star power. And Amanda Nunes is making a name for herself. But who's left for Amanda Nunes to fight? Up at featherweight, Jermaine De Radami. Boy, I hope I pronounced that right. Defeated Holly Holm. Okay? Well, who's next for her to fight? Cyborg Justino, that's who. Chris Cyborg Justino is who should be fighting next for that featherweight championship. But after Cyborg, De Randami and Cyborg fight, well, who's left to challenge after that? The UFC featherweight division had to happen for women because Chris Cyborg is heading towards the twilight of her fighting years. If she's not done yet, but she's got more yesterdays and tomorrows as far as her fight career is concerned. So who's left after that? Well, what happened the first time that the UFC needed females for those divisions? They raided Invicta FC. So now I'm pulling up the Invicta FC roster. As far as bantamweights go, we got Alexa Connors, Amberlyn Orr, Aspen Ladd, Faith Van Duyn, Jessica Hoy, Kelly McGill, Laura Howarth, Melanie LaCroix. All these ladies fight at bantamweight for Invicta. Chris Cyborg was the last featherweight champion for Invicta. So we've got Amanda Bell, we've got Amber Leibrock, Amy Coleman, Charmaine Tweet, Hannah Rogers, LaToya Walker, Marina Shafir, featherweights. So what the UFC needs is they need bodies for that division. They need fighters to fight. Invicta has those fighters to fight. So what's the next logical option? The UFC's already invaded Invicta once, and I imagine they're going to raid Invicta again. In fact, the UFC raided Invicta so hard that of all their acquisitions, they put them all in a season of The Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. Carla Esparza, Invicta champion. Michelle Watterson, Paige Van Zandt, all these ladies came from Invicta. And Invicta is great like that. They have provided a platform for ladies to fight. If Invicta were to get raided again, would they be okay? And the short answer is yes. I think they would be all right for the moment. And right now, Invicta's wheelhouse is the 125 division. But you don't want to leave a promotion with only 125ers to fight, because that puts you in a real bad spot, because then it gets boring. You might as well call it the 125-pound fighting championships. But I think the UFC is going to be raiding soon, and I hope they prove me wrong. I think Tanya Evinger should be a UFC fighter. I thought she should have been a UFC fighter long ago. I thought it was insulting they put her on The Ultimate Fighter. But that's just me. I dig my hooks deep into the history, and I know that folks like Tanya Evinger, like Debbie Purcell, Nicole Albrecht, Miesha Tate, all the ladies who fought for hook and shoot, I thought they, should have just been offered contracts to the UFC. They've already done the work. In fact, not only did they do the work, but they poured the foundation that women's MMA is fought on. And that's why I thought it was insulting that Tanya Evinger should have been on The Ultimate Fighter. No! Tanya Evinger was fighting, traveling across the country for no pay, because this is a time whenever fighters in general weren't getting paid for their fights. They were hardly getting paid for anything. They were competing for the love of competition, and that's what it was. Tanya Evinger is flying around the country, even overseas, trying to find fights just for the sake of fighting. If it weren't for ladies like Debbie Purcell, like Tanya Evinger, like Nicole Albrecht, like Miesha Tate, certainly Ronda Rousey did her share, Gina Carano, without those ladies sacrificing, because when you're fighting for an insulting payday like that, just for the love of fighting, you are sacrificing. Let's not kid each other. That's a sacrifice. Whenever you are sacrificing for the love of a sport, you've paid your dues. Okay? Tanya Evinger should have been offered a title shot, in my opinion. Would she have defeated Rousey? Probably not. But you know what? She's paid her dues. She not only built down the door, and then she kicked it in for women's MMA. That's how I feel about that. I think Tanya Evinger should be offered an opportunity at the UFC. Amanda Nunes. If the UFC is going to raid Invicta, and chances are they are, or maybe not. Zuffa raided Invicta. Let's boil down to the details here. Zuffa raided Invicta. WMG IMG did not. Zuffa did. Maybe WME IMG wants nothing to do with Invicta Championships. But that brings me to another great point. It was not only 10 years ago that the UFC started buying up all these other MMA promotions. They bought Strikeforce, and with Strikeforce they got the Elite XC stuff. They bought up Affliction. They bought up WEC. They bought up Pride FC. But now the UFC has got an ace up their sleeve that's probably going to save them a little bit of money. In fact, that ace is not only saving them money, but ultimately making that money. And that ace up the sleeve is Fight Pass. I subscribe to Fight Pass, and I love it. I can watch The Ultimate Fighter on demand. I can watch all these fights happen, and it's great stuff. What the Fight Pass has done is they've gotten the tape libraries from other promotions. So what do they need to buy the cow for? They're already getting the milk. They already have a deal that's getting them the milk. And I will be willing to bet my favorite kidney that part of the deal that gets those other promotions on Fight Pass says somewhere in the fine print, we get to use your video library for our marketing materials. So you tell me what interest the UFC would have in buying these other promotions whenever they have all the valuable stuff already at their fingertips. To close out the Prizefight Podcast this week, John Copenhaver, War Machine, was found guilty of his assault on Christy Mack. Okay, so this is me telling my listening audience that I am done with War Machine. He's a scumbag. He's been found guilty of it by a jury of his peers. According to the U.S. judicial system, John Copenhaver has been found guilty. I can rightfully say he has done what he has been accused of. And this is me saying goodbye to War Machine forever, because I promise you this, you son of a bitch. After this Prizefight Podcast, I am going to forget your name, and I'm not going to bother remembering it ever again. And that goes for any fighter found guilty of such heinous acts and crimes. I'm done with you. There is a fighter who used to fight with Kimo Leopoldo. And you might remember him being punched in the groin by Keith Hackney a bunch of times. He's done in my book too. I refuse to say his name. That's where War Machine is after today. Coming up next week on the Prizefight Podcast, I'm going to be talking hopefully to Coach Andre from Port City Boxing here in Wilmington, North Carolina, about the Azalea Festival boxing tournament that's going to be happening during the Azalea Festival. It's a big deal here in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's a boxing tournament that has fighters aging from 8 to 58, possibly. A huge string of weight classes, and the boxing tournament is absolutely free. I want to bring as much attention to that boxing tournament as possible because it's a really cool part of the Azalea Festival. Free fights. I want to support that as much as I can. That's going to be next week on the Prizefight Podcast. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, fights, Cameron, action.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cage Nation Prizefight Podcast. All rights reserved. 2016 to 2017 Planet Aries Sports. The Prizefight Podcast is part of the Cage Nation Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.cagenationtv.com.